Hi, church. Have you ever had the experience of God kind of giving you a little whack upside the head, or at least a gentle tap on the shoulder, to remind you of the growth that is still needed in your own life? Well, I had that experience recently, and I wanted to share that with you along with a scripture that it reminded me of. I was driving home from my mom's house and pulled into a fast food restaurant to get a drink for the ride home. And the town where I stopped in is kind of a depressed area, and you often see a lot of people there who seem very, for lack of a better term, down on their luck. And in the aisle next to me, I saw a woman and her son in the car, and the car was kind of beat up, and there were some bumper stickers on the back that led me to make some judgments about this lady. It didn't have anything to do with race. She was actually the same ethnicity as I am. I guess it would be more having to do with classism. But she pulled ahead of me and went to the window to pay, and I pulled in behind her, and I noticed that she gave the cashier her credit or debit card. And after what seemed like a very short time, it was given back, and then she handed the cashier cash out of her window. And I felt kind of bad, like, oh, this poor lady, probably her credit card was rejected and now she's having to use her cash. I hope she can really afford it. You know, if we were in a grocery store and somebody was out of money, it's easy to try and find a way to help them. That's not so in the drive-through. But I was, just sitting there waiting for them to finish their transaction, while in my mind, I was making all kinds of assumptions about this lady. Well, they pulled forward and I pulled up to the cashier, and I started to hand him my card, and he said, "The lady ahead of you paid for your order." And wow, first of all, it made me cry because I was coming from my parents' house. It's been a season of emotion, but it also was so humbling, because here I was making assumptions about that woman and her financial situation, when in fact what she was doing was blessing me. Whatever her financial situation was, she was being generous, and she was giving that example to her son in the car of being able to bless somebody else. It was a really humbling experience, and I had to confess to God my sin of making assumptions, my sin of not being generous with my opinion of this woman who was being generous with her resources with me. And it made me think of the story when Samuel was going to anoint the king that was going to take Saul's place. Remember, Saul was that first king over Israel, and Saul sinned, and God said that the throne was going to be removed from Saul's family and given to somebody else. And God sent Samuel to the house of a man named Jesse. Jesse had 7 sons, and the first son came in, and he was strong and handsome and tall, and he looked like king material. But this is what God said to Samuel: "Do not look at his appearance or at the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For God sees not as man sees. For man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." And, we have a tendency, because it's all we can see, to look at the outward appearance. And that was certainly what I did in that situation in the fast food line. I looked at the outward appearance and I made an assumption. But at that moment, I think God, looking at hearts, was much more pleased with the heart of the lady in the car ahead of me than he was pleased with my heart. And so I want to encourage us. First of all, let's not make assumptions about other people. Let's give people grace as we observe their lives and what's going on. But secondly, let's keep in mind that God is way more concerned about our hearts than he is about our station in life, than he is about the kind of car we drive, than he is about our education or the job that we have. God looks at our hearts, and he wants our hearts to be hearts that love him and love other people. He wants our hearts to be hearts that are pure as we make decisions about other people or make judgments about other people. And he wants our hearts to be filled with humility, not pride. There is nothing in me that commends me to God or that says, God, you're really fortunate that I'm one of yours. But it's easy to fall into that temptation to think more highly of ourselves than we ought to, as Paul said in Romans. So I learned a lesson, or was reminded of a lesson, and I hope that you learn from my mistakes rather than having to have God give you a whack upside the head.